So I figured I'd do another watch video. This one actually about my late father's, one of his Rolexes. So he gave me this Submariner several years ago. Before he passed away, it's right here. But I'll do some close-ups. You can't really see it, but he actually had the box still, which is kind of cool. It's kind of neat with the whole little watch holder, and for some reason this would come out. Boxes are quite a bit different now, but what's really neat about this piece is the paperwork. So I don't want to show the numbers specifically, but it came in this little Rolex sleeve that has I guess it's the number, like the model number for this particular Submariner, which was, I think, well, actually I have the receipt. It's in here. Amazingly enough, he kept the receipt all this time. But it's R16800A, I guess was the, I think they just say 16800, like the Rolex kind of, Rolex geek types who know the model numbers. And then the actual piece of paper inside here, there's a couple things. I mean, there's this, for some reason, a little backer piece of black paper, and then the receipt. He actually had kept the receipt. But in this, it's pretty neat actually, is like a chronometer certification. So it says full 1-year warranty. It was bought at Granat Brothers, GRANAT Bros. I guess this is the store number 2184. So I think this was in San Francisco. Rolex Watch USA certifies this Rolex, and maybe I'll pull up a picture of this certificate. It has a signature of the authorized jeweler, so whoever sold it to him at the Granat Brothers. At the bottom it has official chronometer certification, and it's a Rolex Watch USA. What's kind of neat is it has those little hang tags. Used to be red like this, and its little seal is on it. Unfortunately, he didn't keep the Submariners. Used to come with like I guess it was an anchor, like on a boat. They used to have kind of like a little keychain thing. It would come with a little anchor, but he misplaced it at some point, he said. And then another unfortunate thing that I'm going to have to deal with. Oh, one second before I get to that. So looking at this receipt, and again, I'll pull the receipt up. He purchased this from this Granat Brothers. It doesn't have the address of the store, but he purchased it in July 1986 for $1,060 plus tax. $68.90 tax. So $1,100. So he bought a brand new Rolex Submariner in 1986 out the door for $1,128.90, which, if you're not aware, these watches are like $8,000 now. So it definitely didn't go with inflation. They've gone up quite a bit more than they used to be sold for. Just says description, man's Rolex, doesn't even specify. And there's some numbers. I'm not sure if that's the serial or what. But it's pretty neat that he kept the receipt all this time and kind of all the paperwork. It would be like a really complete set if he had kept the what's it called, the little anchor. I don't know if they called it. It wasn't part of the hang tag, but kind of like a little keychain thing they would give you. But otherwise, it's pretty complete. Unfortunately, he had it serviced 15 something years ago, before this like Rolex craze, and I guess it had started to leak or something because there was moisture inside it. I'm not sure I can't remember the exact story he told me, but maybe he was washing a dish or something, washing his hands, and he said he noticed moisture inside of the crystal, like on the underside inside of the watch. So he knew probably the seal on the stem, the oyster, what they call it, where you screw in the stem, that had failed, or potentially even the seal on where the you access the movement on the back of the watch, you know, like the case back, basically you unscrew that, and that's where to get to the movement to service it and whatnot. So he found some independent watch service guy instead of, you know, going to like the actual Rolex service for some reason. I'm not sure what his reasoning behind that was. And he sent it to them and had it serviced, got it back, and I guess he was setting the time. And I remember trying to remember his whole story, but it was something like he was setting the time, and when he pulled the stem out to, you know, change the time, yet that usually like the first notch will be the date. When you unscrew it, that then it's like initially winding. It's not automatic, but you wind it and then you pull it one click. Most watches that like on a GMT, they'll go straight to the date and you can change the date. And then you pull out one more, and if it's a hacking movement, it stops the second hand and you change the time. And I guess when he went to pull it out with the normal, you know, force you would do, the entire stem came out of the watch. And I've actually watched a lot of watch repairs, and there's a piece inside of the movement you can kind of press, and this like unlatches that so you can pull out the stem. So I'm sure whoever the guy who repaired it or serviced it, I should say, must have done something wrong with that for the stem to just pop out. So he was really upset, and he sent it back to them, sent it back to the guy. The guy fixed it, and then sent it back to my dad. And he claimed when he got it back, there was corrosion on the dial, which, you know, I don't think it was necessarily caused then, unless the guy like swapped dials by accident or on purpose. You know, who knows? This is, you know, like 15 plus years ago. So my dad, and kind of, you know, being upset, said you need to replace it. And the repairman basically said, you know, I don't have Rolex dials, and he offered to give my dad what he called a re-screened bezel, or dial rather. And, you know, he claimed it was a Rolex dial, the metal part that's like what you actually look at, and then they repainted it basically. Who knows if that's even true? I'm not going to take a Rolex apart, but a vintage Rolex apart. But that was what he told him, and my dad agreed to have it replaced, which is funny now because corrosion on a dial, they call that like tropic, and it's sometimes often worth more because it shows kind of like a patina and like a life, like a story to the watch. But that wasn't kind of the case 15 plus years ago. The Rolex craze wasn't like it is now. So my dad had to replace with a potentially fake dial. It's not, you know, I don't know if it's truly a Rolex part, but the re-screening, it doesn't look authentic, and it actually has some of the tell signs of a fake. So that's very unfortunate. But what I've found doing a little bit of research is if you actually send it to Rolex to have it serviced, they will actually take that dial. If anything's defective, and I assume a non-authentic part they would do, I would obviously confirm this with the Rolex service center before I sent it to them because it's my father's watch. But they replace parts to kind of get it back up to spec. So I think they would replace it with what they call a service dial, which obviously isn't worth as much as an original dial as far as the collectability. But this is an original dial, so to me it would be an improvement to have a Rolex part. And it would have fresh lume that actually glows. This lume doesn't really glow. And, you know, it would just be like a better watch. And I think the movement needs a service because it's been, you know, close to 20 years since his last one. And I believe that was probably its only service from, you know, purchase in 1986 to being serviced around, you know, 2005-ish. I think it was right after 2000. And it's due for one anyway, and he didn't wear it a lot, so I feel like the oils and whatnot probably broke down a little bit more than they would if it was kind of moving and things were kind of continuously moving and staying lubricated. So I think it's kind of a good time. I just need to understand, you know, the turnaround time and the costs, because I'm sure with my snafu with the tutor, you know, it's probably not going to be super quick. If it's a few months, I'm totally fine with that. But if they're like, oh, you know, due to supply chain issues, everyone says, if it's going to take, you know, 6 months, or maybe I'll wait and just not wear it much. I've been wearing it this week because we had his funeral. And then I think they'll even replace the bezel, so the kind of 12 o'clock point on the bezel, just a little, I don't know, a little eye thing in there or whatever, I don't know, a little circle with that's supposed to glow. The lume doesn't glow on that either. And there's a couple little scratches that were, you know, something my dad had done as part of his life with this watch, because he wore it for, I think he wore it kind of up until he got it serviced and that whole snafu. So he wore it for, 15 plus years straight, it felt like. I mean, obviously he had other watches, but this was like the watch he wore all the time. And it'll be a little bit of a bummer that they'll probably put a new bezel insert in as well because they want the lume to glow at 12 o'clock. But I'm okay with that because, it's still his watch. The case will be original. Movement, should be the same. They might replace some parts on it depending. And then the bracelet, I'm not sure. It's not too worn out and not scratched up. He polished it a lot, which isn't good for, collectability because like even this little Rolex crown is starting to like disappear on the clasp. But I'm not sure. I've heard sometimes they replace the bracelets when they get really worn out and they're kind of stretchy. But this one seems like it's still nice. I don't know if they would replace it, but they'll polish it up and stuff. So I think it would be kind of cool to kind of have a new lease on life. But then I know it's still his watch, and then it's kind of fresh and nice and something I can wear more and more usable with the lume and everything. It does actually still keep good time, so the movement must be in decent shape. But yeah, it's kind of cool. It's kind of like it was important when he gave it to me because it was his watch and it was cool and it's a Rolex and I obviously didn't own any Rolexes. You can't really buy them now unless you're spending big money at these authorized dealers or lucky or whatever. But it seems like putting your name on a list, even if you have the money to be able to afford it, which most don't. Like you can't just buy one. So it's cool to have it, and it's his watch. But it became a lot more special, in the last couple weeks when he passed away, because I always remember him giving this to me, and I wore it right after he passed away. I started wearing it again. I hadn't been wearing it at the time, and put it on to kind of think about him, and then wore it obviously to the funeral. It's kind of like a send off to him, and it was his watch. So special watch to it was special, but now it's very special with him gone. So I thought I would kind of do a video about that, and maybe you guys find this interesting or not, I don't know, but I still think it's pretty neat that he kept some of this old paperwork. I feel like a watch this old, it's almost as old as me. I was born in 81, so it's almost as old as I am, and he still kind of kept the receipt and stuff. It's kind of insane. I'm sure that Granat Brothers or whatever went out of business in San Francisco many, many years ago. I've never heard of them. So it's not one of the common jewelers, you see around these days. So anyway, that was it for today. Talk to you guys later.